Hello YouTube, my name's Nana, welcome to my channel, and yes, I am talking about Trayvon Martin. Today I want to talk about Rachel Jeantel and Juror B37. I think Rachel Jeantel is honestly just, again, one of the best people to come out of this situation. Because despite how the defense tried to paint her, I feel like she has been consistent, that she has been true to herself, and she's unabashedly herself. And I think it's a quality people don't like in everyday life, interacting with people, and I think it's something that didn't necessarily come across well to this specific jury and to some people watching the case. But I admire her because she was incredibly real. And in a trial, isn't that what we seek? I mean, don't we want people to be real? She got up there, despite not wanting to be involved in a murder trial, like pretty much anyone, and she said what she had to say, despite the fact that the defense tried to paint her as ignorant, tried to paint her as uneducated, tried to paint her as aggressive. She stood her ground, and she was strong throughout. And I have so much respect for her. Dawn West coming out and asking if she understood English twice is nonsense. I mean, I'm no legal expert, but I feel the prosecution absolutely should have been able to object. I don't understand how that's relevant at all, especially when Dawn West has been conversing with this young woman, not only throughout the trial, but for months before. So he obviously knows she understands English. He knows she understands English perfectly well. And then trying to paint it as, oh, because it's not your first language. I really have to ask Dawn West, would you have asked the same question to, someone of European background? Someone who was a native French speaker and came here? And, had a thick accent or something? Would you have asked them, oh, do you understand English well? The idea of trying to paint her as this stereotype that wasn't credible. Obviously it worked in terms of Juror B37, but it was awful. But regardless, Rachel Jeantel stood strong. And, perhaps she doesn't enunciate as clearly as everyone would like. A lot of people have that problem. As I record these videos, I constantly think, am I enunciating enough? Am I clear enough? A lot of people have that problem. Trying to discredit her and a lack of faith in her communication skills simply because she's speaking in what you wouldn't consider, nice, proper, white English. It's awful. She shouldn't at all be discredited, and she didn't give in to that pressure. So I have to applaud her for that. And as she pointed out, she was willing to get on the stand and talk. And George Zimmerman was not. He did not, testify in his own trial, which I think should have been a message to the jury. But as I'm about to get into with Juror B37, she clearly did not care about much of the trial besides the fact that she believed George felt fear. This juror, the things she revealed in her interview with Anderson Cooper after this trial are just so revealing. It makes the verdict make a lot of sense, although no less unfortunate. But this juror, I really could not believe all the things coming out of her mouth. First of all, I don't really like to think in conspiracies, but I think it is somewhat fair to call her ethics into question. She was initially eager to get on the trial, eager to get on a high-profile murder case, despite the fact that she claims she doesn't like the media. And then, 2 days after the trial, she already has a book deal, and she's on Anderson Cooper. I just think it's crazy. I mean, this woman, I think it's very possible that she had an agenda and wanted to profit off this case. And I'm so glad about the power of social media. And I'm so glad that Twitter shut down this book deal. Because there's no way she should have been profiting off of this case. Especially if it might have been her plan from the get-go. But then again, we don't know. We'll probably never know for sure, but I think it is somewhat fair to call her ethics into question on those grounds alone. And that's aside from the fact that she shows a lot of the same racial prejudice and a lot of the same racial ignorance that George Zimmerman did. The prosecution never could have won with her. She sympathized with George Zimmerman. She related to George Zimmerman. And therefore, she only really listened to his side of the story. She said George said, and George's rendition. However, George did not testify in court. He was never under oath. However, she then readily disregards witnesses like Rachel Jeantel saying that she's, uneducated, her communication skills weren't great, and that she feels sorry for her. I'm sorry, Rachel Jeantel doesn't need you to feel sorry for her. You patronizing her is sickening. She had no concern with finding him guilty. She never would have, because she would have been admitting her own guilt. She would have been admitting her own racial prejudice. She would have been admitting that, oh yes, I do find Trayvon Martin threatening simply because of the way the defense painted him. Because racism is not logical. It's not reasonable. It never is. This woman doesn't understand that. That's her problem. But then having her on this jury was a huge problem. And it makes so much sense that 4 of the other jurors instantly distanced themselves from her and said, hey, she's speaking for herself. And, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Those jurors may or may not agree with her. They may or may not have the same ideas as her, but they did end up voting the same way. I don't know if if this can fully be put on the prosecution, because jury selection is an act of essentially deselecting jurors. Perhaps everyone else they found really was actually just explicitly worse than this woman. But this woman should not have been on this jury, because she was not interested in any sort of justice. She wasn't even all that interested with the law. She was interested in the fact that she sympathized with George Zimmerman. And that was it. Like, really. There was no way. It meant that she was going to accept everything the defense said. It meant that she was going to accept everything she heard George Zimmerman say. And it meant that she was never going to believe that a young black man wasn't threatening. And it meant that she was never going to believe that Rachel Jeantel could be credible. And so there's no way, considering this information that we have now, there's no way she should have been on the jury. But she was. And it's another example of the racial issues that plague this case, despite the fact that she said race didn't have anything to do with this case. Again, showing her ignorance, showing the fact that she just really is horribly unaware. She's horribly unaware of the impact of what she's saying. And she's horribly unaware of her own ignorance and her own privilege. And that's very sad. So, in the end, Juror B37 and Rachel Jeantel are almost foils to me in this, very unfortunate story. Because Rachel Jeantel, she was real. She was unabashedly herself. But she then suffered the profiling that her friend suffered and led to his death. Whereas Juror B37 is ignorant, is unaware, and is perhaps, fairly calculating and manipulative in terms of, how she approached this trial. And that's a very unfortunate possible reality for the way this case turned out. Thank you for watching part 4. I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. Make sure to like, dislike, comment the opinions I'm sure you have below. Share and subscribe if you want to support this channel. And again, watching this on the day I upload, then continue on to part 5 tomorrow. If you're watching this after the fact, then you can continue on right now.